On my birthday, my daughter-in-law called me a useless burden. So I froze the account she used to pay her mortgage. I'm glad to have you here. Follow my story until the end and comment the city you're watching from, so I can see how far my story has reached. I never thought my 60th birthday would end with me sobbing alone in my bathroom, the echo of my daughter-in-law's words still ringing in my ears. Useless burden. I had spent weeks planning the celebration, wanting everything to be perfect. My small apartment was filled with fresh flowers, and I'd prepared all of my son Mark's favorite foods. Even made his favorite chocolate cake from scratch, just like I used to when he was a boy. The evening started wonderfully. My son, his wife Wendy, my 2 teenage grandchildren, and a handful of my closest friends gathered in my modest living room. The space was cramped but warm, filled with conversation and laughter. For a moment, I felt truly happy. Then came the gifts. My friends brought thoughtful presents, a cashmere scarf, a gift card to my favorite bookstore, a bottle of expensive perfume. When I opened Mark's gift, I was surprised to find a beautiful travel journal. "Mom, I know you always wanted to travel," he said, his smile genuine. "Maybe it's time you start planning those trips you and Dad always talked about." My heart swelled. For years after Harold passed away 5 years ago, I'd put aside my own dreams to help Mark and his family. I had sold our family home to help them with the down payment on their beautiful house in the suburbs, moving myself into this small apartment. Since then, I'd been secretly paying their mortgage from an account Harold had left me, knowing they struggled with Mark's inconsistent contractor income and Wendy's part-time work. "I'd love that," I said, emotion catching in my throat. "I've been thinking about visiting the Grand Canyon this summer. Maybe I could even take the grandkids for a weekend?" That's when Wendy's face changed. Her smile tightened, eyes narrowing slightly as she sipped her wine. "Don't be ridiculous, Anna," she said, her voice carrying across the suddenly quiet room. "The kids have summer programs. Besides, they need proper supervision, not babysitting from someone who can barely take care of herself." The room fell silent. I felt my cheeks burn. I just thought, that's the problem, isn't it? Wendy continued, her voice sweet, but her words sharp as knives. "You're always inserting yourself, acting like you're still needed. Let's be honest, you're becoming a useless burden at this point." The silence that followed was deafening. Looked at Mark, waiting for him to defend me, but he stared at his shoes, his face red. My grandkids looked mortified, but said nothing. My friends exchanged uncomfortable glances. "I think the cake is ready," I finally managed, my voice barely above a whisper as I escaped to the kitchen. The rest of the evening passed in a blur. Everyone left early, offering hurried goodbyes and avoiding eye contact. Mark mumbled something about talking to Wendy, but the damage was done. When they left, Wendy didn't even look at me. Now, sitting on the edge of my bathtub, tears streaming down my face, the irony wasn't lost on me. For 5 years, I had silently supported them financially. The mortgage payment for their beautiful 4-bedroom house came from my account every month, $2,300 that I never mentioned, money from Harold's life insurance that I could have used for myself. 60 years old, and I was being called a burden by the woman whose lifestyle I secretly funded. I wiped my tears and looked at my reflection in the mirror. My mother's words came back to me. "Never let them see they've hurt you." I straightened my shoulders and washed my face. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about the account, the automatic payments, Wendy's cruel words. By morning, I had made a decision. With shaking hands, I called my bank and asked to freeze the joint account I had set up for the mortgage payments. "Are you sure, Mrs. Collins?" the bank representative asked. "Yes," I said, my voice stronger than I expected. "I'm quite sure. It's time for a change." I didn't know what would happen next, but for the first time in years, I felt something stirring inside me that I thought had died along with Harold. my self-respect. The morning after my disastrous birthday party, I sat at my small kitchen table, clutching a cup of tea that had long gone cold. The humiliation still felt fresh, but something else was emerging: clarity. As painful as Wendy's words had been, they forced me to see what I'd been denying for years. It hadn't always been this way. When Mark first introduced me to Wendy 15 years ago, she was charming and attentive. She asked about family recipes, helped with holiday preparations, and seemed genuinely interested in becoming part of our family. Harold had his reservations. "Something doesn't feel right about her," he'd whisper to me. But I dismissed his concerns as overprotectiveness. Everything changed after the wedding. The transformation was so gradual I barely noticed it happening. First, our Sunday dinners became monthly, then quarterly, then when they could fit it in. Wendy always had an excuse. The kids were too tired, Mark had work, she had a headache. When I'd drop by with homemade cookies for the grandchildren, Wendy would intercept me at the door. "The kids just had sugar," or "we're just heading out," she'd say, taking the container without inviting me in. Later, Mark would call to thank me, always when Wendy wasn't around. After Harold's heart attack 5 years ago, Wendy's control tightened. During those dark days after the funeral, when all I wanted was to be surrounded by family, she limited my time with the grandkids, claiming they were too sensitive to be around grief. Then came their housing crisis. Mark's contracting business was struggling and they risked losing their home. "It's embarrassing," Mark confessed one night, his voice breaking. "I don't know how to tell the kids we might have to move into an apartment." The solution seemed simple to me. Harold and I had paid off our home years ago. "I'll sell the house," I told Mark. "You can use the money for a down payment on a new place. I'll find a small apartment." When I told my friends about my decision, they thought I was crazy. "That house is your security, Anna," my friend Patricia warned. But I couldn't bear to see Mark struggling. The sale of our family home gave them enough for a down payment on a beautiful house in an upscale neighborhood. I moved into my small apartment, telling myself it was cozy rather than cramped. What I never told anyone, not even Patricia, was that I continued supporting them. The life insurance money Harold left me wasn't enormous, but it was substantial. I set up a joint account and arranged for the mortgage payment to be transferred each month, telling Mark it was just until you get back on your feet. That was 4 years ago. As I sat at my kitchen table, memories washed over me. The time Wendy forgot to invite me to Emma's dance recital, then showed me photos afterward. The Christmas when my gifts for the children mysteriously got lost, only to be found weeks later, long after the excitement of the holiday. The family vacation to Florida I wasn't told about until they returned, tanned and full of stories. My phone rang, interrupting my thoughts. It was Patricia. "Anna, are you okay? I've been worried sick after what happened last night." "I'm fine," I said automatically. "No, you're not. What Wendy said was cruel. And Mark just sitting there. I wanted to shake him. He's caught in the middle," I said, making excuses for my son as I always did. "Has he called to apologize?" Patricia asked. The silence answered her question. "Anna, we need to talk, really talk, about everything you've been doing for them." I felt a knot in my stomach. I'd never told anyone about the mortgage payments. "What do you mean?" "I'm not blind, Anna. You sold your home to bail them out. You live in that tiny apartment while they're in a mini mansion. And I suspect there's more you haven't told me." The tears came then, hot and unexpected. Years of built-up hurt and resentment poured out as I finally confessed everything. The mortgage payments, the credit card debt I'd helped clear, the tuition for the grandkids' private school activities. "Oh, Anna," Patricia sighed when I finished. "You've been their personal bank while she treats you like an unwelcome guest." "I just wanted to help," I whispered. "Help is one thing. Being taken advantage of is another. She was right. For years, I'd confused sacrifice with love, mistaken exploitation for family duty. I thought about the account I'd frozen that morning. It was a first step, but I knew there would be consequences. My phone buzzed with a text from Mark. "Mom, is everything okay with the bank? Got a weird call about the mortgage payment." It had begun. The confrontation I'd been avoiding for years was now inevitable. I stared at Mark's text message for what felt like an eternity. My fingers hovered over the screen, uncertain how to respond. Part of me, the part that had spent years prioritizing everyone else's needs above my own, wanted to apologize, to unfreeze the account immediately. But another voice, one that sounded remarkably like Harold's, whispered, "You deserve better, Anna." Instead of responding to Mark, I called Richard, the financial advisor Harold and I had worked with for years. I needed to understand exactly where I stood before facing the storm I knew was coming. "Anna, it's been too long," Richard said when we met at his office that afternoon. "How have you been?" I took a deep breath and told him everything. The house sale, the secret mortgage payments, Wendy's behavior, and my decision to freeze the account. Richard removed his glasses, rubbing the bridge of his nose. "Anna, do you realize how much you've given them over the past 5 years?" When he showed me the figure, I felt lightheaded. Between the house, mortgage payments, and other loans that were never repaid, I had given Mark and Wendy nearly $450,000, money that was meant to secure my retirement, to fund those trips Harold and I had always planned to take. "What are my options?" I asked quietly. "Legally, you're within your rights to stop the payments." Richard explained. "Your name isn't on their mortgage. You've been making these payments voluntarily. And financially, where does this leave me?" Richard ran the numbers. If I stopped supporting Mark and Wendy, I would still have enough to live comfortably in my apartment and even take some modest trips. Not the lavish retirement Harold and I had planned, but certainly better than continuing to drain my savings. "Anna," Richard said gently, "Harold would want you to take care of yourself now." As I left his office, I felt a strange mix of guilt and liberation. For the first time in years, I was putting myself first, and it felt both terrifying and necessary. That evening, Patricia invited me to dinner with some women from our old neighborhood. I hesitated. Social gatherings had become rare for me as Wendy gradually isolated me from my support network, but decided to go. The restaurant was warm and inviting, filled with the chatter of friends reconnecting. Susan, Jean, and Margaret welcomed me with hugs, their familiar faces a comfort after years of limited contact. "We've missed you, Anna," Susan said. "We tried calling so many times." Wendy usually answered, Jean added cautiously. "She always said you were busy or not feeling well." I nearly choked on my water. "What? I never got any messages." The women exchanged glances. "We suspected as much," Margaret said softly. "The few times we saw you, it was like you were different, withdrawn." As dinner progressed, I learned how Wendy had systematically cut me off from my friends, intercepting calls, declining invitations on my behalf, even spreading rumors that I was becoming difficult after Harold's death. All while I was funding her lifestyle. "Anna," Patricia said, reaching across the table to squeeze my hand, "you need to know you're not alone. We're all here for you." For the first time since freezing the account, I felt confident in my decision. These women, my true friends, saw me clearly and valued my presence. The contrast with Wendy's treatment couldn't have been starker. My phone buzzed repeatedly throughout dinner. 3 calls from Mark, 2 from Wendy. I silenced it. Whatever storm was brewing could wait until morning. When I returned home, there were 6 voicemails. I played the first one from Mark. "Mom, please call me back. There's some issue with the bank account. The mortgage payment didn't go through. The REI." Second, also from Mark, sounded more urgent. Mom, seriously, we need to talk about this account. Wendy's freaking out. The third was from Wendy, her voice sickly sweet but with an undercurrent of panic. Anna, dear, there seems to be some confusion. With the bank, call us back immediately. By the sixth message, Wendy had dropped all pretense of politeness. If you think you can just cut us off without consequences, you're more senile than I thought. Call us back now. I deleted the messages and turned off my phone. Tomorrow would be soon enough to face them. That night, I slept better than I had in years. In the morning, I woke up feeling strangely peaceful. I made coffee, opened my curtains to let in the spring sunshine, and called my lawyer. I need to know exactly where I stand, I told him, explaining the situation. And I want to change my will. By noon, I had a clear understanding of my rights and a plan for moving forward. I turned my phone back on to find 15 missed calls and a text from Mark. We're coming over. Be there in 20. I straightened my shoulders, looked at Harold's picture on my mantle, and whispered, Wish me strength, love. The doorbell rang. The moment of truth had arrived. When I opened my apartment door, the first thing I noticed was Wendy's face, flushed with anger, her carefully applied makeup doing little to hide her fury. Mark stood slightly behind her, looking uncomfortable, unable to meet my eyes. What the hell do you think you're doing? Wendy demanded, pushing past me into the apartment without waiting for an invitation. I closed the door calmly, surprising myself with my own composure. Hello to you too, Wendy. Mark. Mom. There's some mistake with the bank account, Mark said, his voice uncertain. The mortgage payment didn't go through. It's not a mistake, I said quietly. I froze the account. The silence that followed was deafening. Wendy's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water, while Mark looked genuinely confused. What account? He finally asked. What mortgage payment? The realization hit me like a physical blow. He didn't know. All these years, and Mark had no idea I'd been making their mortgage payments. Wendy recovered quickly. Your mother's being ridiculous, she snapped. She's clearly confused. I'm not confused, Wendy, I said, my voice steadier than I expected. For the past 4 years, I've been paying your mortgage. Every month, $2,300 from my account to yours. Mark turned to Wendy, his expression shifting from confusion to shock. Is this true? Of course not, Wendy scoffed, but her eyes darted nervously around the room, avoiding Mark's direct gaze. Your mother's getting things mixed up. I walked to my desk and retrieved the folder my lawyer had helped me prepare that morning. Bank statements, transfer records, everything documenting years of financial support. Here, I said, handing the folder to Mark. See for yourself. Mark sank onto my sofa, flipping through the papers with growing disbelief. Every month, like clockwork, the same amount transferred from my account to theirs, labeled mortgage payment. Additional transfers for property taxes, home repairs, the children's activities. Wendy? Mark's voice was barely above a whisper. Did you know about this? Wendy's strategy shifted instantly. Of course I knew, she said, tossing her hair defiantly. Your mother offered to help when your business was struggling. It was her idea. To help temporarily, I clarified. Not indefinitely, and certainly not while being treated like an unwelcome guest in your lives. That's not fair, Wendy protested, but her voice lacked conviction. Not fair? I echoed, feeling years of suppressed anger finally surfacing. What's not fair is being called a useless burden by someone whose lifestyle I've been quietly funding for years. Mark looked up from the papers, his face pale. Mom, I had no idea. I thought the account was just for emergencies. I didn't know you were making our monthly payments. How could you not know? I asked gently. Wendy handles all our finances, he said, turning to his wife with new eyes. You told me we were managing on our own. Wendy's demeanor changed again, tears suddenly appearing. I was just trying to protect you from the stress, she said, reaching for Mark's hand. You were working so hard and your mother wanted to help. I didn't think the details mattered. The manipulation was so transparent I almost admired her skill. But Mark wasn't falling for it this time. The details, he repeated incredulously. My mother has been supporting our entire lifestyle, and you didn't think that was an important detail? While you've been treating her like a burden, I finished for him. Like someone who doesn't matter. That's not true, Wendy insisted, tears flowing freely now. I've always respected Anna. Calling someone a useless burden at their birthday party is an interesting form of respect, I said dryly. Mark stood up, running his hands through his hair in agitation. I can't believe this. All those times you said Mom was too busy to come over, or that she canceled plans. Was any of that true? Wendy didn't answer, which was answer enough. And the kids' grandparents' day at school, Mark continued, realization dawning. Mom asked me why Emma didn't invite her, but you said Mom had declined because she wasn't feeling well. I felt a lump in my throat. I never received an invitation. The silence in the room was thick with decades of lies unraveling. Mark looked, between Wendy and me, as if seeing us both clearly for the first time. We need to fix this, he finally said. We'll find a way to pay you back, Mom, and things will change with how we treat you. I promise. It's not about the money, Mark, I said softly. It's about respect, about being valued for more than my checkbook. I know, he said, genuine remorse in his voice. And I'm so sorry I didn't see what was happening. Wendy's tears had dried up remarkably quickly when they stopped serving her purpose. This is absurd, she snapped. You're both overreacting. So I said one thing at a party. Does that erase everything I've done for this family? What exactly have you done, Wendy? Mark asked quietly. Besides spending my mother's money and keeping her from her grandchildren? The look Wendy gave me was pure venom. You'll regret this, she hissed. Both of you. She stormed out, slamming the door behind her. Mark and I stood in silence for a long moment. I don't know what to say, he finally murmured. I've been so blind. We both have, I admitted. But now our eyes are open. As Mark left to deal with Wendy, I knew the chaos was just beginning. But for the first time in years, I felt something that had been missing since Harold died. Hope. The week after my confrontation with Mark and Wendy was eerily quiet. No angry phone calls, no unexpected visits, just silence. I tried to convince myself this was a good thing, that perhaps they were taking time to process everything, but a knot of anxiety tightened in my stomach with each passing day. On Thursday afternoon, my doorbell rang. When I opened it, I found my 16-year-old granddaughter Emma standing there, backpack slung over her shoulder, eyes red from crying. Emma? What's wrong, sweetheart? She fell into my arms, her slender body shaking with sobs. Everything's awful, Grandma. Mom and Dad won't stop fighting. I ushered her inside, made her a cup of hot chocolate, the same way I used to when she was little, and listened as she poured out the chaos of the past week. Mom's furious all the time, Emma explained, her hands wrapped around the mug. She keeps saying you've turned Dad against her, that you're trying to break up our family. She looked up at me, her eyes so much like Mark's. But that's not true, is it? No, honey, I said gently. I just couldn't keep pretending everything was okay when it wasn't. Emma nodded thoughtfully. I always wondered why you stopped coming around as much. Mom always had some excuse, but it never made sense. My heart ached at how much I'd missed. Dance recitals, school events, everyday moments that should have been shared. I wanted to be there, I said softly. More than anything. I know, she said, surprising me with her perceptiveness. Dad told us everything, about how you've been helping us all these years. About what Mom said at your birthday. She looked down, ashamed. I should have said something that night. I'm sorry. I squeezed her hand. You're 16, Emma. It wasn't your responsibility? Mom's been saying awful things about you to everyone. Aunt Sarah, the neighbors, even my friends' parents. Emma's voice hardened. That's why I came here. I couldn't listen to it anymore. She doesn't even know. I'm here. My phone rang. Mark. I answered, hearing panic in his voice. Mom, is Emma with you? She didn't come home from school. She's here, I assured him. She's safe. His relief was palpable. Thank God. Wendy's filing for divorce. The news shouldn't have surprised me, but it did. I'm sorry, Mark. Don't be, he said, his voice stronger than I'd heard it in years. It's been a long time coming. I just couldn't see it. After we hung up, Emma and I spent the evening looking through old photo albums. I showed her pictures of Mark as a boy, told her stories about her grandfather, filled in the gaps of a family history Wendy had tried to erase. Around 8 o'clock, Mark arrived. He looked exhausted but somehow lighter, as if a heavy burden had been lifted. When Emma went to the bathroom, he turned to me. Wendy's been lying to everyone, he said quietly. Telling people you're becoming senile, that you're trying to control us with your money. He ran a hand through his hair. Some people believe her. And you? I asked, suddenly afraid of his answer. I'm seeing everything clearly for the first time in years, he said. I let her come between us. I let her isolate you. I'm so sorry, Mom. His apology was like a balm to years of hurt, but I knew we had a long road ahead. 2 days later, my 14-year-old grandson Tyler showed up at my door after school. Dad said I could come, he explained, shuffling his feet nervously. Is that okay? I welcomed him with open arms, overjoyed to have another chance to rebuild our relationship. Unlike Emma, Tyler was quieter about the situation at home, but I could see the relief in his eyes at being in a peaceful environment. The children's visits became regular, a bright spot in the gathering storm, because Wendy was indeed gathering a storm. Patricia called one evening, her voice tight with anger. Anna, I don't know how to tell you this, but Wendy's been spreading vicious rumors. She's telling everyone you cut them off financially to manipulate Mark into leaving her. I sighed, not surprised, but still hurt. How many people believe her? Some, Patricia admitted, but others are starting to see through her, especially after what happened at the school fundraiser. Apparently, Wendy had made a scene, publicly accusing me of trying to steal her children. Her performance might have been convincing if Emma hadn't been there to contradict her, calmly telling everyone within earshot exactly what her mother had said at my birthday party. Mark called that night, sounding drained. Wendy's demanding. The house in the divorce settlement, he told me. The house you helped us buy. What will you do? I asked. Fight, he said simply. Not just for the house, but for the kids. I've let her control our lives for too long. The next day, an unexpected ally emerged. Wendy's mother, Eleanor, called me out of the blue. We'd never been close. Eleanor lived in Arizona and visited rarely. But her call stunned me. Anna, she said without preamble, I owe you an apology. I've known for years that Wendy can be difficult, but I had no idea how badly she was treating you. How did you find out? I asked. Mark called me, she explained. He thought I should hear the truth before Wendy's version reached me. Her voice softened. I raised her better than this, Anna. I'm truly sorry. By the end of the month, battle lines were clearly drawn. On my side stood Mark, Emma, Tyler, my friends, and surprisingly, Eleanor. On Wendy's side were those who either believed her lies or feared her enough to pretend they did. As May turned to June, I received an invitation that made me catch my breath. Emma's dance recital. The card was handwritten by my granddaughter. I really want you there, Grandma. Front row, where you belong. I held the invitation to my heart, tears blurring my vision. Whatever happened next, this moment was worth everything. A year passed, marked by both difficult challenges and unexpected joys. The divorce between Mark and Wendy was finalized in November, more quickly than any of us anticipated. Wendy, eager to reinvent herself as the wronged party, accepted a settlement that gave Mark primary custody of the children and ownership of the house, provided he buy out her portion. I don't know how I'll manage the payments, Mark confessed one evening as we sat on my small balcony. The autumn air was crisp, and we were bundled in sweaters, watching the sunset paint the sky in brilliant oranges and pinks. You'll figure it out, I said. The children need stability right now. What I didn't tell him was that I'd already spoken with Richard, my financial advisor. The money I'd saved by no longer supporting Wendy's extravagant lifestyle had accumulated nicely over the past year. I could help Mark with the buyout if necessary, but this time as a properly documented loan with clear terms. No more secret accounts, no more enabling. But Mark surprised me. I've taken on extra projects, he said. And without Wendy's spending, I can actually make the numbers work. He looked at me, a newfound confidence in his eyes. I want to do this on my own, Mom. I felt a surge of pride. My son was reclaiming his independence, his dignity. I know you can, I told him, but I'm here if you need me. Emma and Tyler flourished once the tension at home dissipated. Emma threw herself into dance with renewed passion, while Tyler discovered a talent for photography, constantly snapping pictures of everyday moments that most people overlooked. They visited me regularly, no longer needing to sneak around or make excuses. Wendy moved to Chicago, claiming dramatically that the town was too toxic after what we had done to her. She called the children sporadically, her interest waning, further when they refused to take sides against Mark or me. By spring, the calls had dwindled to once a month, then even less frequently. Are you sad about Mom? Tyler asked me one Saturday as we worked in the small community garden I'd joined. Sad about her leaving? I clarified, gently pressing a tomato seedling into the soil. He nodded, his expression serious beyond his 14 years. I'm sad about what could have been, I said after considering my answer carefully. I wish we could have had a different relationship, but I'm not sad about setting boundaries. Tyler seemed to process this, his hands working methodically to plant the next seedling. Dad says you taught him what real strength looks like. I blinked, back sudden tears. Your dad is teaching me a few things about strength himself. With the money I saved each month, I began planning the trip to the Grand Canyon I'd mentioned at my fateful birthday party. Mark insisted on helping with the arrangements. You've supported everyone else for years, Mom, he said. Let me do this for you. The trip was scheduled for late September, when the summer crowds would have thinned but before the winter chill set in. As the date approached, my excitement grew. I bought a new camera, comfortable hiking shoes, and the perfect hat to shield me from the desert sun. A week before my departure, the doorbell rang. When I opened it, I found Emma and Tyler standing there with identical grins and a large wrapped package. What's this? I asked as they bustled in, barely containing their excitement. An early birthday present, Emma announced, since you'll be at the Grand Canyon for your actual birthday. My next birthday, my 61st, was indeed during my planned trip. I carefully unwrapped the package to find a beautiful leather-bound travel journal, similar to the one Mark had given me the year before, but with a significant difference. This one was already partially filled. Open it, Tyler urged, practically bouncing with anticipation. Inside, I found page after page of handwritten notes, maps, photographs, and memories. The children had collected stories and pictures from my friends about trips Harold and I had dreamed of taking. Paris, the Maine coastline, the lavender fields of Provence. They'd researched each destination, adding practical tips and meaningful quotes. It's a roadmap, Emma explained, her eyes shining, for all the trips you're going to take. We want you to write about each adventure, Tyler added, so we can read about them when you get back. I held the journal to my heart, overwhelmed by the thoughtfulness of the gift and what it represented. Not just their support for my dreams, but their confidence that I had many adventures ahead of me. The day before my departure for the Grand Canyon, Mark hosted a small gathering at his house, now truly his house, with no shadow of Wendy lingering in its rooms. Patricia, Susan, Jean, and Margaret were there, along with a few new friends I'd made through the community garden. Toast, Mark announced, raising his glass. To my mother, Anna Collins, the strongest woman I know. To Anna, everyone echoed, glasses clinking. As I looked around at the faces of those who truly cared for me, my son who had found his way back to himself, my grandchildren who now sought out my company instead of being kept from it, friends, both old and new who valued me for who I was, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. I have a toast of my own, I said, raising my glass in return, to second chances and new beginnings. Later, as the evening wound down and guests began to leave, I found myself alone in the kitchen with Mark. He was washing dishes, refusing my offers to help. You know, he said thoughtfully, when you froze that account last year, I was shocked and confused. But it was the best thing that could have happened to all of us. I leaned against the counter, watching my son, truly seeing him for perhaps the first time in years. Sometimes the hardest decisions lead to the greatest freedom. He nodded, understanding in his eyes. I just wish I'd seen the truth sooner. We see things when we're ready to see them, I said, not a moment before. The next morning, as I boarded the plane that would take me to the first adventure of my new life, I thought about the sequence of events that had led me here. One cruel comment at a birthday party, one decisive action in response, a series of difficult conversations and painful revelations. And now, freedom. Not the lonely, bitter freedom of someone who has cut ties out of anger, but the peaceful liberation of a woman who finally understands her own worth. As the plane lifted into the clouds, I opened my new travel journal to the first blank page and began to write. Today, I am exactly where I'm supposed to be. I was no longer anyone's burden. I was simply Anna, mother, grandmother, friend, and at long last the heroine of my own story. Now I'm curious about you who listen to my story. What would you do if you were in my place? Have you ever been through something similar? Comment below. And meanwhile, I'm leaving on the final screen 2 other stories that are channel favorites, and they will definitely surprise you. Thank you for watching until here.